behalf of Community Alliance for Global Justice, we would like to welcome you to the 17th Strengthening Local Economies Everywhere dinner. My name is Heather Day. I'm the Director of Community Alliance for Global Justice.
And my name is Noelle, and I'm organizer with CAGJ, and we will be your MCs tonight.
And we just want to start off with a really special thank you to Zimmel and everybody in Spielkes. Spielkes is Seattle's klezmer brass band playing old school Yiddish folk music with their own twist. They play traditional songs from Eastern European Jewish community and new songs of resistance, celebration, and in solidarity with struggles for liberation and justice. What do we need more right now than that? So thank you so much. I know you're all very engaged in what's going on right now, and just it's really special that you're here with us tonight. Thank you, and I'm sure some of you have enjoyed them at this very venue where we hosted SLEE the last time we had an in-person sit-down dinner, which has been since 2019. So it's just really special to be back in this venue with a lot of the same folks and new people too. So thanks for being with us.
Where are they?
Where are they?
I don't know. Way back there.
Oh, back there. Thank you. Thank you.
Malike. We're like wondering where you were.
Yay! So cute.
So
I'm going to ask everyone to quiet down.
yeah.
So I really love your attention. I know everyone's super excited to see each other, but it's hard to hear.
No more fun.
So, and we want to, the next part of the program, we're giving an overview of CAGJ. For some of you, you're new to the organization, and it's a way for us to share with you what we're all about. And for some of you, you haven't heard updates on our work for a while. So Noelle is going to give that quick overview. Thank you.
We're not quite there yet.
Oh!
Before that, we're doing a little intro. So no more fun. Just kidding. So yesterday, there was a gathering at Black Star Farmers Black Lives Memorial Garden. And folks there are working to stop the city from destroying the gardens under the guise of turf renovation. Boo. Yeah. And those gardens were founded in 2020 in the midst of the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and countless other brutal murders of our Black relatives by police. And afterwards, we shared a meal and conversation with Malik and a group of Seattle Black farmers and food activists, many of whom are here tonight. And Reverend Jeffrey, who is also here from Clean Greens, was there, who humbly mentioned his over 30 years of programming for Black communities. So a theme in all of these conversations was about sustainability. How do you sustain work like that? What does it actually look like to organize for liberation with the intergenerational fight in mind, knowing that the fruits of our labor may take well beyond our own lifetimes? And last time we were here in this venue in 2019, the coordinator of this dinner was Shazo, who we lost in January. And she held a mindfulness meditation to welcome everyone that year. It was very important to her to organize from a place of slowness and embodiment. And it's ironic that with our program being so tight tonight, we were worried about the time it might take to bring this piece back in. But there is always time. And sometimes sitting in a moment longer with the uncomfortable thing is the most important. So as we move through our program tonight, we invite you to return to the center. And perhaps with our next breath in, let's start noticing what it really feels like to gather tonight. Let's notice those who are here with us and those who are not. As you breathe out, perhaps send acknowledgement to all the hands and life energy that went into preparing the bountiful meal we are about to enjoy. And let's access our deepest gratitude for the salmon we will be eating tonight, who without the stewardship of Coast Salish people since time immemorial would not be here in this way to nourish us. And maybe you find throughout the night some extra gratitude for the words and wisdom of those doing the work to expand the possibilities of joy and care in our communities. And maybe you find ways to sit with the words and this experience for an extra moment, even among the bustle around us. And it can be difficult to return to our body when we need it most. And in that same vein, can we truly sit also with what's uncomfortable and where we might be challenged? Can we sit with the fact that we are gathering here on violently stolen lands, waters, and labor? How might sitting with that discomfort give us all fuel towards liberation for all? And what are the opportunities that may come from this gathering tonight to push the needle towards land back? With land back being the reclamation of not just land, but everything stolen from the original peoples, including language, ceremony, food, education, housing, healthcare, governance, medicines, and kinship. Because in the words of Tuck and Yang, until stolen land is relinquished, critical consciousness does not translate into action that disrupts settler colonialism. True resistance means dramatically shifting power in material terms. And that action is to create, in the words of MLK, not a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, but rather a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. So my hope for us tonight is to work to really be present, and in doing so, we hope to honor our beloved Mads, for whom we've lit a candle in the center of the room tonight. And so with that, Heather is going to welcome our honored guests who are carrying out this work.
So beautiful.
So we've invited a lot of farmers. Our urban farmers are with us, and the rural farmers, I think, we're doing farmers markets, and it's always really hard for them to join us. But we thank them all for their hard work and for donating the beautiful food that will be coming to your tables this evening. I think Pete Knudsen was able to be here. Are you here yet, Pete? From Loki Fish Company. We love you, Pete. Awesome, here you are. So, Pete is a fisherman and his family are fishermen, and they've donated a salmon for every table all 17 years that we've had SLEE. So generous. Yeah. And that includes the virtual years where some of you were beneficiaries of salmon to cook at home. So we can't thank you enough, Pete. We want to honor our solidarity campaign partners. Black Corporate Salmon is in the house tonight. We'll be hearing more from them later. Familias Unidas por la Justicia. I'm not sure if they're able to be here, but we love you. One of our biggest supporters in the community, table captains tonight, solidarity campaign partners, is United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 3000. Thank you for showing up. And finally, Washington Fair Trade Coalition, and we've been doing great work with so many folks in the community fighting APEC this year with the Pacific Northwest POP Coalition, People Over Profit. Thank you all. And then our honored guests tonight include Black Star Farmers, Marcus and everybody with Black Star, thanks for being here, who of course gave the keynote last year, and part of that was captured in one of our films, our Rich Appetite films that we're going to be screening later tonight. So it's just a nice continuation. And Black Farmer Collective and Yes Farm, thank you so much to Ray, who's been playing a huge role in coordinating this. I know you have so many other people here, I'm not going to name you all by name, but thank you, all of you. Nurturing Roots, I don't know if Naima's here, I didn't see you yet, but we love you. Thank you for being part of this. And finally, Clean Greens, who we're so honored to get to spend some time and learn more about, what you're fighting these days in our dinner last night. And thanks so much, Tom, for being here. Clean Greens Farm, amazing farm. Oh, and we recruited Tarek Abdullah last night from Feed the People. Thank you, Tarek, who's in the kitchen, holding it down. Such an amazing organizer and chef. We're so honored. So So thank you so much. So tonight's program, we have this amazing dinner for you tonight, all made, with food from local farmers, but also we always try to uplift the fair trade movement. So there's also foods, grown by farmers in the global south, part of the cooperative movement that we integrate into the meal to honor both farmers here and around the world, thus strengthening local economies everywhere. We want to remind you that the silent auction is still going on, so during dinner there will be time for you to enjoy the discussion with each other, but also to check out the silent auction out in the hall, and that will close at 8. And then we have a dessert dash. So here's how that works for anybody who hasn't been to SLEE before. So we recommend that you all, when you get a chance, decide amongst yourselves which dessert your table wants, because we're going to ask you to make a donation if you can later on, and we'll count up the donations, and then the table who raises the most will get to run for the dessert first, and then we'll call out other tables. We're anti-capitalist, so mostly in a random way. But so it's not fully dependent just on how much you donate, but just so you know, if you become a sustainer tonight, or if you increase your sustainer donation, all 12 months of that go towards your chance to go get your dessert. So please become a sustainer tonight or increase. And thanks to everyone here and the bakers and good people that donated all the desserts tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Noah.
Do what I have to say. Okay. So Community Alliance for Global Justice was founded in 2001 by Seattle area activists who helped organize the historic shutdown of the World Trade Organization meeting in 1990.
I just have to say, Jeremy Simmer is here, who's the founding director, and it's his first ever SLEE, and it means so much to me to have you here. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I wasn't there. We strive to carry on the protest legacy of effective and creative collective action for global justice, and we aim to work in solidarity with the powerful social movements of the global south and with frontline communities here in Washington state through grassroots community-based organizing and a commitment to ending all forms of oppression. We work with our partners to fight unjust trade and agricultural policies, and we promote alternatives like food sovereignty and agroecology. And next year is the 25th anniversary of the WTO protests, and we intend to mark the occasion just as we've done with the 10th and 20th anniversaries, so please join us to envision what that might look like. So CAGJ strengthens the global food sovereignty movement through community education and mobilization. We organize for food sovereignty using a racial equity framework, which requires taking our lead from those most impacted by our unjust food system. We use, to do this, 2 primary strategies, including movement building and shifting the narrative to uplift food sovereignty and agroecology. And the Alliance part of our name refers to our many partners, local, regional, national, and global. As members of the National Family Farm Coalition, we are proud to be affiliated with La Via Campesina, the International Peasant Alliance, who coined the term food sovereignty. And as members of these notable coalitions, we get to be part of building the people power to take on the powerful interests that shape the global economy and food system. And these are some of the organizations and alliances with whom we are most closely aligned. So since 2006, CAGJ had operated through 3 programs, which were Food Justice, AgriWatch, and Trade Justice. And as a result of strategic planning processes in the past few years, we've grown and restructured our work in response to the changing political landscapes and new organizing opportunities. And our priorities now are food sovereignty, ending corporate control in the food system, and trade justice. And with that, we will continue to prioritize a solidarity approach, working with partners to build, amplify, and carry out our campaigns. So AgriWatch is one of our most active campaigns. It challenges the push by governments, corporations, and private philanthropic actors to expand corporate industrial agriculture into Africa, And notably, we focus on the role of the Seattle's own Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and its subsidiary, AGRA, which was formerly named the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, in promoting this harmful model. We also partner closely with African organizations to uplift farmer-led and agroecological alternatives. And then this past year, we completed a 5-part film series called Rich Appetites: How Big Philanthropy Shapes the Future of Food in Africa, or is shaping, which examines problems with the Gates Foundation-funded industrial agricultural model being pushed onto African farmers and amplifies real solutions led by our partners. We'll watch one episode, as Heather said, later this evening, and you can view the entire series for free at richappetitesfilm.com. And there are also many great resources to accompany the films. You can check out the companion guides at our table in the back of the room. And over the past 2 years, we've helped our African partners organize Resistance to Agra's annual meetings in Africa, drawing attention to the Gates Foundation's failures through well-attended virtual press conferences. Last year, while Agra was holding its conference, the Seattle Times carried a strongly critical article on the front page featuring our campaign, the first critical article in a long time in our local newspaper. We've also deepened our relationship with the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa and its members by attending 2 of their meetings on the continent over the past year. Last fall, Heather traveled to Cameroon with Malik, and in August, Heather and Bill all participated in the second Pan-African Seed Governance Conference in Tanzania. So another one of our campaigns is Stop GE Salmon. Salmon is a cultural and ecological keystone species in the Northwest, making the production of genetically engineered salmon a distinct point of concern for communities in this region. It has been 10 years since we joined the fight to oppose GE salmon in solidarity with Northwest tribes, who are the salmon people, and to carry this movement for indigenous food sovereignty. And today, we're grateful to Block Corporate Salmon for taking the lead on this campaign, which is also supported by North American Marine Alliance and Friends of the Earth. In May, we hosted a salmon-centered art build with David Solnit and Julie Searle as part of our art and activism series. And the props we made were used in an action against APEC in August and during Block Corporate Salmon's exhibit at Farm Aid last month. And that's Morgan Brown, whose art that is. So CAGJ joined the annual benefit concert Farm Aid in Noblesville, Indiana, with a contingent of over 40 farmers, fishers, and advocates with National Family Farm Coalition and North American Marine Alliance. And with organizers from Block Corporate Salmon, we visited Aquabounty's principal facility growing genetically engineered salmon an hour away from the concert site in Albany. There, we also met with whistleblower and former Aquabounty employee Braden Humphrey, whose findings provided the foundation for the BCS report Aquabounty Exposed, released last year. And after holding a press conference near the facility, Farm Aid supported and hosting a salmon bake with fish harvested by Randy Settler, a Yakima tribal fisherman from the Columbia River. So another one of our campaigns is Farm Worker Solidarity. And I'm sure some of you here remember the energy of our first keynote speaker.
Who remembers that? Who was at the first SLEE?
Can I hear you?
I know you were. I know Webster was. Some of you.
Yay. Farm worker Rosalind began back in 2006, 17th SLEE. Wow. We've worked closely with her and her organization ever since, which is Community to Community, or C2C, which is based 2 hours north of us in Bellingham. It was C2C who mobilized community support when farm workers went on strike at Sakuma Brothers Farm 10 years ago, and who 5 years later won the recognition of their union, Familias Unidas por la Justicia. And this year marks the union's 10th anniversary. And currently, C2C is running 2 candidates for city councils, which include staff members Liz Darrow in Bellingham and Lucy Magical in Mount Vernon. So please spread the word if you know her. This year, we joined C2C and FUJ in the annual Farm Worker May Day March. one of our art and activism workshops was dedicated to making this beautiful banner for our solidarity work, and we were proud to march with it that day. And every year we also organize a visit to the cooperative farm that leaders of the FUJ Union founded, called Cooperativa Tierra y Libertad, in a town near the Canadian border. There they produce berries and many other fruits and vegetables, including nopales, or cactus, for which there is a huge demand in their community. The cooperative has expanded recently with a model to incorporate new farm worker families over time. And then our next campaign is trade justice. And CAGJ works for trade justice with the Washington Fair Trade Coalition, with whom we share an office, by organizing to end the current U.S. trade model that prioritizes profits over people and the environment. We demonstrate how free trade policies undermine food sovereignty and small-scale food producers everywhere. And we do this with the help of Livia Campesina and other partners whose campaigns we amplify. We had a great opportunity this year to connect local organizing to global trade issues when APEC decided to hold meetings in Seattle in advance of their ministerial in San Francisco next month. APEC stands for Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, and we joined with labor, climate justice, anti-war, human rights, and other community organizations to call out their trade agenda that prioritizes corporate profits while undermining the rights of workers, women, and migrants. And we joined the steering committee of the coalition that formed, was called Pacific Northwest People Over Profit, or PNW-POP. And as part of that contingent, we helped organize a super exciting anti-APEC People Summit at the University of Washington, where over 400 participants learned about why we need to bring attention to the APEC meetings. And energy was super high when we hosted a workshop called We Say No to Zillionaires, How Big Philanthropy is Shaping the Future of Food, which also included a screening of Rich Apatek's film, the episode Seeds, and a very lively discussion. Then our last campaign area is community education, and Rise Up is one of our programs, which is a free 3-month political education and leadership development program where we collectively develop tools and analysis to strengthen the global food sovereignty movement. And CAGJ hosts Rise Up as part of our commitment to community education. And over the past 5 years, we've had hundreds of registrants from all over the US and the world, and a smaller core of active participants. This year, we paused Rise Up to assess lessons learned and future directions. And we've decided to focus the 2024 program on a smaller and more intimate cohort of youth and students aged 16 to 25, with a focus on more concrete organizing skills and applied campaign practice, prioritizing participants of color. And this revamped and hybrid program will be called Food Fight, a summer crash course in grassroots organizing for food and climate justice. But to make this happen, we need money. So we're currently applying for grants to raise $40,000. Grant funds will help us cover participants' costs, including travel stipends. And your donations tonight will help us hire a coordinator and outside experts to run the workshops. And we're very excited about this program. And so, if all that sounds fun, there are many ways to get involved with CAGJ, including becoming a member by donating your time or money, or both. You can sign up for our e-newsletter or one of our listservs. You can come to our events, including journalist Tim Schwab has a new book coming out called Reckoning with the Myth of the Good Billionaire. I think that's what it's called. On Wednesday, December 6th at Town Hall, Seattle, we will be co-hosting an event. You can join a project or an organizing committee. You can volunteer in our office, apply for an internship, or help us organize SLEE next year, or our political education program, Rise Up, or as we said last time, it will be called Food Fight. And that is it. I will pass it back to Heather.
That's a lot. Woo! Thanks for giving the overview. Too much. So it is my honor to introduce our keynote tonight. As I let I let Malik know that we served dinner after the keynote because we just want folks' attention dedicated. So I forgot to announce that earlier, but you already have some yummy food I can see. You're enjoying the kale salad, and you probably saw in the program, but Malik is the second speaker from Detroit Black Community Food Security Network to give the only organization that will have given 2 keynotes at SLEE. And the first one was Abba Ifeoma, and it was the year, who was the beekeeper at the time, and it was the year that we were publishing our second book, which you can get at our table. And we were soliciting recipes at SLEE, and she hand wrote out this kale salad recipe, and we enjoyed it in our home, but also at many events ever since. And I thought because Malik was speaking tonight, we should honor Abba and have the salad. So Malik Kenyatta Yakini is giving a keynote tonight entitled Black Food Sovereignty, Local to Global. He is co-founder and executive director of Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network, it is now called. He is also the co-founder of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. And I had the honor and pleasure of traveling to Cameroon, as was mentioned last fall, and after sort of seeing Malik present at many conferences and seeing what a giant he is in the food justice movement, admiring him from afar, I had this amazing experience of getting to travel to Cameroon with him because he nominated Food Sovereignty Ghana to win the Food Sovereignty Prize, which is something that we help coordinate. And so we invited him to participate in all the events around that prize because Food Sovereignty Ghana won the prize. And then because of that, it was just like, you know what, this is the person that we need to invite to participate in this work with us. And he made himself available like in just a couple weeks, and it was just such an exciting thing. And the U.S. Food Sovereignty Alliance supported that trip. So as a longtime Pan-Africanist who views his food justice work in Detroit as part of the larger movement for building power, self-determination, and justice for African people, he embodies the local to global connections that CAGJ has always strived to make, to situate local organizing in global movement building. I personally am particularly inspired by Malik's interest and vision in contributing to the development of an international Black food sovereignty movement that embraces Black communities in the Americas, the Caribbean, and Africa, and hope we'll continue to work in solidarity with African partners together. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Malik.
Appreciate it. This one?
Yeah. You mind holding it?
I don't mind holding it.
Okay, great.
Okay. Good evening. How's everyone doing? Go ahead. She just had, yesterday she had a boot on her foot because it was injured, and so I guess she's trying to re-injure it. So let me start by saying I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to follow my sister Abba Ifeoma, who's one of the co-founders of the organization that I lead. I'm honored to be in partnership and solidarity with the Community Alliance for Global Justice, which is doing tremendous work that you just saw. You just saw a summary of all of that work, but particularly the international work involving U.S. policy and U.S. corporate policy towards the African continent is very important. So I'm going to talk rapidly because she's asked me to try to confine my remarks to 20 to 25 minutes, and it's always difficult when the speaker is standing between the audience and dinner. So I'm going to try to be brief in my remarks, as brief as I can, but still trying to give you an overview on the topic. So first I always begin by giving praise to the Creator, and whatever your spiritual path may be, I respect that. I'm not trying to impose mine on anybody else, but I am required to put that out in front of me because that's the platform that I stand on, and it allows me to be bold and fearless. Secondly, I want to acknowledge my ancestors, those who are in my personal bloodline, as well as those that African American people share collectively. Thirdly, I want to acknowledge my comrades that I work with in the Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network, in the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, and in the Detroit People's Food Co-op. And then finally, I want to just give a shout out of solidarity to the Palestinian people. So how many people like stories? Great, because I want to tell you a story called Hot Cocoa. And it's really intended to be kind of humorous, but hopefully you'll be able to glean some important lessons from it. I wrote this actually about 2 years ago during the winter in the height of the pandemic, so just to give you a little context. Every morning for the past few weeks, perhaps to soothe the discomfort of social isolation and to provide an antidote to Michigan's winter temperatures, I've enjoyed a cup of hot cocoa. It's a good alternative to Starbucks chai tea latte that somehow I got hooked on a few years ago. Here's how it started. I was riding in a van with 7 or 8 other people traveling from Detroit to Brooklyn in early November for the annual Black Urban Gardeners and Farmers Conference. Midway through the trip, we made a rest stop at a plaza where there was a Starbucks. One of my friends in the van, who actually happened to be Abba Ifeoma, who was vegan, mentioned that she was going to get a chai tea latte made with soy milk. I had never been in a Starbucks and didn't know that they sold anything a vegan could consume. I had never had a cappuccino, a frappuccino, or a latte, and imagined Starbucks as a place frequented by bourgeois gentrifiers with small dogs. By the way, is Seattle the white people walking dogs capital of the United States? That question just came to my mind this morning. I followed my friend's lead and ordered the chai tea latte made with soy milk. I've never been a coffee drinker. My mother and father drank coffee, and my brother all drank coffee, but I never got into it. Frankly, I didn't like the taste. Even as a child, I didn't like coffee ice cream. I never drank a cup of coffee in my life with the exception of a shot glass size cup of coffee that I was offered in Senegal, which I thought was tea before I drank it. Anyway, back to the rest stop on the way to New York City. I returned quickly to the van to get out of the cold, windy Pennsylvania mountain weather. I settled back into my seat in the second row of the van. My comrades boarded and we were back on the highway. As I was holding the cup of chai, I suddenly realized the comfort that holding a cup full of a warm beverage brings to coffee drinkers. It was an aha moment. I slowly sipped my first chai tea latte as we barreled down the turnpike. It was great. Thus began my descent into the corporate hands of Starbucks. I learned the tricky lingo used by Starbucks to describe the sizes of their cups. A tall is the second smallest size at 12 ounces. A grande, which means large in Spanish, is the medium-sized cup at 16 ounces. And a venti, which means 20, is their largest size and is actually 24 ounces. On many a cold March, April, October, or November mornings, I stopped at Starbucks before opening D-Town Farm. With the help of some of my comrades, I've come to more fully appreciate while I should not be supportive of Starbucks when there are local coffee shops struggling to survive. I have drastically reduced my trips to Starbucks, but still occasionally enjoy a chai tea latte. Maybe the hot cocoa I've been drinking for the past few weeks is taking the place of my beloved chai tea latte. But this story is not really about Starbucks or hot cocoa. Well, not exactly. I was making my hot cocoa this morning, and I perfected a method where I put 2 teaspoons of raw sugar in a cup, followed by 1 teaspoon of cocoa powder. Recently, at the suggestion of a friend, I tried adding a little cinnamon. I mixed the dry ingredients, then heat up a cup of almond coconut milk. I poured, well actually now it's oat milk, but at that time, I was still on the almond tip, right? We'll talk about that later. I pour a little of the hot milk into the cup, stir the ingredients until they dissolve, then pour the rest into a cup pour the rest of the milk in and stir again. As I sat down in front of my computer with my cup of hot cocoa, I thought about the geographic origins of almonds, coconut, cocoa, sugar, and cinnamon, and how history has converged so that the descendant of West Africans, with some slave masters' blood in the mix, is sitting in North America in a place the French colonists called Detroit, drinking a morning beverage made from cocoa from West Africa, with sugar likely from Brazil, almonds probably from California, and coconuts and cinnamon perhaps from Indonesia. As we eat for health and pleasure, we don't typically think about the global systems that grow, harvest, process, and transport foods from all over the world to our local grocery store. Even the most radical among us have the expectations that we should be able to drive to a local grocery store and purchase our favorite products from anywhere in the world at any time of the year. You want tomatoes, avocados, oranges, or bananas in January in Detroit? No problem. Global capitalism brings it to your neighborhood or a white suburb near your neighborhood if you live in an area impacted by food apartheid. Our taste buds have become accustomed and in some cases addicted to flavors and textures from faraway places. To be clear, for most of human history, people either migrated seasonally, following plant and animal food sources, or have primarily eaten foods that originated where they live. With the cross-cultural contact between peoples across geographic boundaries, traders seeking to make a buck transported highly prized food items from one region to another. In Sudanic West Africa, salt was so highly prized that it was dried into blocks and used as a form of currency. Coffee from the highlands of Ethiopia became a valued commodity in the Ottoman Empire and later in Italy and then the rest of Europe. Sugarcane originating in Asia and transported to the Caribbean was so valued by Western Europeans, that it became an economic driver for the enslavement of millions of Africans who were also transported to the Caribbean to plant, harvest, and process the cane. In some ways, the desires of European aristocracy for prized foods from around the world motivated the global exploration and later global imperial designs of Western European nations. You may recall that Cristobal Colon, that murderous scoundrel whose name has been rendered Christopher Columbus in the Anglophonic world, and after whose name the word colony is derived, was in search of the mythical Golden Indies when he stumbled upon what is now the island home of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. The Golden Indies were said to be rich in exotic spices as well as gold and jewels. What followed was 500 years of imperialism and colonialism that concentrated wealth and power in the hands of the global white ruling class and inversely underdeveloped Africans and the rest of the world's non-white peoples. This relationship provided Western Europeans and later their American descendants, at least those who could afford it, with sugar, salt, pepper, corn, beans, melons, and other foods from the global South. The food system that provides most of our food today is the inheritor of the exploitive legacy left by colonialism and imperialism. Capitalism invisibilizes the process by which foods from around the world end up on our plates and in our cups. The label on my box of powdered cocoa doesn't indicate a country of origin. Consumers thus don't have to think about where it came from, who grew it, who so-called owned the land it was grown on, who processed it, who transported it, and how the profits were divided. We don't have to think about the environmental impact of clearing forest lands for the farming of commodity crops or transporting food hundreds or thousands of miles. Fortunately, the label on my raw sugar is more transparent and says that the origin of this product is, quote, from a land where the tropical sun meets rich, fertile soil and cool mountain waters. Capitalism's got us by the taste buds. We're hooked, and not many of us will return to a way of life where we, our friends, and our neighbors are producing most of our own food. We are emotionally addicted to the taste and textures of our childhood. We have warm memories related to holiday meals or summer gatherings. In some ways, these tastes have come to define who we are. We're addicted to the boost of energy that sugar and caffeine give our bodies. And ironically, many meetings to plan the revolution have been held over cups of coffee. So, while we're thinking about how to create more justice in the world, let's give some thought as to how the current food system promotes land grabbing, exploitation of workers, environmental degradation, poor health, mindless consumerism, and the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of already wealthy white men, and let's give some thought to what a fair, racially just, non-exploitive, non-extractive food system might look like. Thank you. Okay, now moving on quickly, I want to go to this PowerPoint, and is somebody controlling this, or do I have a, oh, you're doing it. Hey, what's up? You good? Okay, we're gonna work together, me and you. Okay, so our organization, Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network, we changed our name about 2 or 3 weeks ago from Food Security Network to Food Sovereignty, because we realized early on that really the work we're doing was more aligned with food sovereignty. And it's already been said that that term was coined by La Via Campesina. And I'll just say in summary that food security basically means that people have enough food to eat, that people are not hungry, that people have sufficient calories to go about their day-to-day work. But that's a very low bar. And my friend Raj Patel says that you can have food security in prison. And so clearly what we're struggling for is something beyond just people having sufficient calories. And that's something that we're struggling for is called food sovereignty. Because food sovereignty means that the people who produce and consume the food are shaping and defining the food system. And that's what we're concerned about. If you don't have this food sovereignty lens, then you may think that the answer to lack of food access in a community is bringing in a Walmart. Because on one level, that may solve the access problem. People have greater access to food. But we have no say-so in shaping what happens in Walmart. We have no say-so in their policies, and we certainly don't benefit from the profits. And so food sovereignty goes beyond just making sure that people have enough calories, and it empowers people to shape and define the food system that provides our food. In Detroit, one of the things that we're really adding to this definition of food sovereignty, because we live in a city that has about 640,000 people, 80% of whom are African American, but others, I'll just say that, various other ethnic groups control almost all of the grocery stores in the city of Detroit. So we've added to food sovereignty this idea that not only do the consumers and producers need to shape the system, but we need to be the ones that benefit from the profits that are derived from the production and buying and selling of food. So one of the things we do is we operate a 7-acre farm, D-Town Farm. Shout out to all the farmers in the house, by the way. Farmers, sure you can put your hands up. You know, I was in Mali some years ago, and we were traveling with a small group, and we saw an elder sitting on the side of the road, and he actually had a shotgun like posted up next to him, and we said, let's just go in and talk to the elder. We had a brother with us who could translate. We had a very interesting conversation, and then at the end of the conversation, he pointed across the road, and he said, before you leave the village, you have to go across the road and greet the farmers. And there were 2 farmers with oxen who were tilling the fields. And he said the reason you have to go greet the farmer is because it's those who work in the sun who make it possible for those who work in the shade. So big up to the farmers. So we are building Black food sovereignty with the Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network, and one of the ways we do it is by inviting our communities to interact with us. This is not something that we're doing on our own. This is something that we are interacting with our brothers and sisters, our fellow community residents, to shape a local food system that we have control over. So one of the ways we do that is by encouraging people to come out and work with us on the weekends at D-Town Farm. This, by the way, is our board president, Dr. Shakira Tyler, who, when I step down next January 1st, will be one of the 2 co-executive directors of the Detroit Black Community Food Sovereignty Network. Next slide. So we grow more than 3 dozen different fruits, vegetables, and herbs at D-Town Farm. And you see a few pictures there. This is Mama Jackie Hunt, who was one of our founding members. Unfortunately, we lost her to COVID in 2020, as we lost many people in the city of Detroit. Detroit was hit very hard by COVID. We grow watermelons. We grow kale, which, you know, is a gentrifier's favorite, but also has become one of my favorites, I have to say. I didn't grow up eating kale, just for full transparency. I grew up eating collards, mustards, and turnips, and then as a grown man, I discovered this thing called kale. So sometimes I worry between the Starbucks and the kale. Now I'm becoming a gentrifier. So also we have our harvest festival every year, because we found that everybody's not going to come out and put their hands in the soil. You got to be kind of cut from a certain kind of cloth to do that. And in American society in particular, a lot of people, they don't want to get dirt under their fingernails, or don't like the bugs or whatever. Everybody's not cut out for that, right? But so a certain number of people are going to come and put their hands in the soil, but other people, we can attract them by events like this, where we have music and speakers and food demonstrations. And so we have this annual harvest festival, which brings out hundreds of people who are not the same people who come out and volunteer at the farm, as a way of, again, broadening our community base of support. Next slide. This was our farm stand last year, and we sell our food primarily at a farm stand in front of the farm on weekends, but we also this year have a contract with the Michigan Department of Education. We're selling some food to them for boxes to go to families at schools. And then we also traditionally have sold at farmers markets. The main 2 farmers markets we sold at closed as a result of COVID and haven't opened back up. Next slide. We also, along with 2 other organizations in Detroit, lead the Detroit Black Farmer Land Fund. And the other 2 organizations are called Oakland Avenue Urban Farm and Keep Growing Detroit. And so since 2020, the Detroit Black Farmer Land Fund has amassed funds, primarily from individual donations, and given grants to 120 farmers, black farmers in the city of Detroit, to either buy the land that they're farming on or to buy infrastructure to support them. And so we are nurturing a new kind of generation of black farmers in the city of Detroit. Next slide. We also have 2 youth programs. We understand that for our movement to be sustainable, we don't only have to use, or we have to go beyond just using sustainable agricultural techniques, but our movement itself has to be sustainable. And one of the ways we make it sustainable is by intentionally nurturing young people, by bringing young people into this work, so it's not all people with gray in their hair, and it's people who have youth and vibrancy and can carry this baton forward. And so we intentionally organize youth in 2 programs, one called Food and Flavor, which is for high school students, and the other one is called the Food Warriors for young people in elementary school. Next slide. The big project that we're working on now is called the Detroit Food Commons, and this is the artist's rendition of this building. We're building a 2-story, 31,000 square foot new building right on the main street in Detroit, and it will house the Detroit People's Food Co-op on the first floor, a cooperative grocery store that we have taken the lead in organizing, and on the second floor, we have 4 shared use kitchens, a community meeting space about the size of this room, and office space. This was some photos from our groundbreaking last April 23rd. This is part of our staff and board at the groundbreaking with shovels doing the symbolic, you know how to do. And then, can you go back? And then we have Mama Hanifa, who's our youth and education. She's actually education and outreach director is her title, but she runs our youth programs that I just talked about. And this is her at the groundbreaking doing a burning composting workshop at the groundbreaking. We turned the groundbreaking into a whole community event. This is Angela Lugo Thomas, one of the board members of the Detroit People's Food Co-op, and that's me ranting and raving against capitalism and white supremacy at the groundbreaking. So this was in July. This is what the building looked like. July 9th, keep going. this is what the building looked like last week. So we are about 90% finished with the building, and this is this is on the first floor in the grocery store itself. Some pictures I took last week. We have most of the equipment in. It hasn't all been installed yet. Much of it has been installed, and we're expected to open in February of 2024. Next slide. This is our co-op board president, Lene Gilbert Williams. And this was a few weeks ago in St. Paul at the up-and-coming food co-op conference when our peers voted the Detroit People's Food Co-op to be what they call the best of the best of the up-and-coming food co-ops that are developing across the country. And so this is our board president proudly displaying the plaque that we were given. Next slide. But this work is also national. And so while it's important, I think it's most important that we do the work where we are locally. You know, you got to do it right there on the ground where you are, but you also have to have a vision that compels you to connect with other people across the country who are doing work, and then also internationally. And so as I'm ending this presentation, I want to go through some of the national work that's happening and some of the international work. If you go back one slide. So the National Black Food and Justice Alliance is an organization that myself and Dara Cooper and Beatrice Beckford started in 2016, I think it was. And the work of the National Black Food and Justice Alliance is we convene black co-op developers. We address the issue of black land loss. We have established the first of what will be several agroecology centers at HBCUs. And the first one was established at Florida A&M and opened last November. And it's called the Lola Pender Frank, I forget the name, forgive me. But it's an agroecology center named after two local activists and farmers, black activists and farmers in Florida. And also we work to influence policies such as the Justice for Black Farmers Act that Senator Cory Booker introduced, which has not passed yet, let me see. But Leah Penniman, who is one of our members, and some of her staff worked directly with Senator Booker to help develop that legislation. Also, we're working with folks internationally. So Heather mentioned that I'm a longtime Pan-Africanist, and that's absolutely true. I'm convinced that the problems of black people in particular can't be solved only within the American context, because the problems are essentially the same whether black people are in the United States, the Caribbean, South America, Africa, and so we are stronger together, let's just say that. And that's not to say because I'm a Pan-Africanist that I don't recognize that other people around the world are oppressed and that we should not stand in solidarity with them. So I'm both a Pan-Africanist and an internationalist and in favor of freedom and justice for all human beings. So, you go back. This is my teacher, Anand Laloli. He's from Guyana, South America originally, but he's lived in Toronto since the 1980s. We actually first met in the early 1980s because I'm a musician and I was playing in a reggae band that played in Toronto a lot, and he was a bass player playing in Canada's top reggae band at the time, and we often did shows together. We had no interest in food security, food sovereignty at that point in time. We connected around reggae music. But then as time went on, we kind of actually lost contact for 15 years, and then I saw him in the late 1990s, and he exposed me to this term, community food security. I had never heard this before. I was gardening, but I didn't know there was this larger movement of people trying to create a more just food system. So I stand on his shoulders. But he is currently heading what's called the Toronto Black Food Sovereignty Working Group. And I want to point this out to you because the city of Toronto, the government itself, has actually created what they call an Office of Anti-Black Racism. Do y'all have that in Seattle? You have that? No, but I'm saying, has the city government created a department, allocated funds, and acknowledged that anti-black racism is a thing? I didn't think so. We don't have it in Detroit either. But they somehow have gotten the government of Toronto to endorse this and to fund this work of the Toronto Black Food Sovereignty Working Group. I just want to put it on your radar so that you can do some further research. If you Google that, you'll come up with a lot of the documents that they've developed. In many ways, I think they've created a template that can be duplicated either in whole or part in other cities in North America. Next slide. So, as Heather mentioned, she invited me to attend the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa's biennial meeting, which occurred last November, and I was pleased to be able to go and to connect with people on the African continent. I was the only so-called African American in attendance, and so I felt I had a tremendous responsibility to represent the home team. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm down with the African world community, wherever you're from. I'm from Detroit, though, and I'm not, you know, that's what I'm repping. So, on the first day of the conference, they asked people to wear what they said was traditional costume. And so, there were 170 or so delegates from 30 different African countries. These were two who were dressed in their traditional garb. Now, as an American-born African who descended from people who were enslaved, I was a little confused about what I should wear as my traditional dress. I didn't know if I should wear a zoot suit or a hoodie and some Timbs, or I didn't know what, you know. So anyway, I ended up wearing a dashiki from Ghana. It worked out all right. So at the conference, a major theme was kicked off. In French, it's Je mange africain. In English, it's My Food is African. And what this is intended to address is a phenomenon that occurs throughout the world, and that is that this global system of white supremacy permeates our thinking and suggests to us that if something is associated with white people, Europe or America, that somehow it's inherently better. In fact, in Detroit, where I come from, when I was growing up, sometimes people used to say, the white man's ice is colder. Have y'all heard that before? The white man's ice is colder. Right? So, I mean, this is the thing, right? That part of what happens when you have oppressive systems is not only do the people who are doing the oppression ingest these narratives that they believe to be true, but the oppressed also ingest narratives about themselves that inevitably lead to them seeing themselves in a diminished, inferior way. And so as we are doing the work of combating the system of white supremacy and capitalism and its evil twin sister, or twin brother, maybe I should say, patriarchy, as we're working to unravel those things, we have to be conscious that we're also unraveling them within ourselves. We're not just unraveling these systems, but we have internalized these ideas about white supremacy. And that's true whether you are a black person, a person of color, or a so-called white person. We've all ingested these ideas relating to white supremacy, and hopefully we're all in the process of healing from that. Likewise, we've all ingested ideas related to patriarchy, and that infects all of our thinking, and we have to grow beyond that as well. So anyway, Je mange africain is to uplift foods from the African continent, which often are more nutritious than those so-called Western foods that are imported, are often more climate resilient, but the thing we have to do is now convince African people that the food that they have eaten for centuries, that their ancestors produced, is as good as or better than the food coming from Europe or America. So thus, the campaign, My Food is African. Let's go to the next slide. So on the second day, we were able to attend a vocational training center that teaches people agroecology and in a city called Mefo. And there's actually a little video clip. Can you see the video clip to play? Don't worry. There's some drumming and dancing I wish you could see, but I'll just say it was incredible. A lot of people know about djembes in the United States. In fact, the djembe has become almost the universal African drum. But in Cameroon, we didn't see many djembes. We saw more log drums and other types of drums. So they did a wonderful drumming and dancing exhibition for us when we first arrived at the city, and the mayor greeted us. Next slide. So once we got to the center, we were welcomed by more drumming and dancing, and we got to see the various ways in which they're doing agriculture, including the terracing that they're doing on the side of the hill, growing bananas, doing companion planting. You see half of Heather's face. If the words weren't there, you would see her whole face, but she was having a great time. Next slide. On the last day, I had the opportunity to address all of the attendees at the conference, and I reminded them of the central role that Africans from the so-called Western Hemisphere have played in developing the idea of Pan-Africanism. The idea of Pan-Africanism did not develop on the African continent. It developed primarily in the Caribbean, in Trinidad, with people like Henry Sylvester Williams, and because of many of these folks from the Caribbean and from the United States, sometimes being in London, had influence on emerging African anti-colonial leaders, or in the case of Kwame Nkrumah, perhaps the greatest Pan-Africanist. He went to school at Lincoln University in the United States and was influenced by these ideas that came from the so-called Western Hemisphere. So I wanted to remind the conference participants of the importance of making sure that as we're looking at organizing the African continent for greater self-sufficiency, that we have a Pan-African view, and that we're making sure that we're looking at what the Organization of African, what do they call it now? The African Union, I'm sorry. What they call the sixth region, which is the diaspora. That they have acknowledged that black people throughout the African diaspora are in fact part of the African continent and are represented by the AU, the African Union. One of the most significant connections I made with this brother was with this brother Karubel Tadale, who is from Ethiopia and is the communications officer for AFSA, but happens to live in Dallas. And so on the way back, actually, Heather, Karubel and I were all on the same flight, so we got a chance to spend some time. But I've been in touch with him several times since returning, and in fact, he was in Dallas a few months ago and kind of co-presented with me. And so he's a key person in connecting the black food sovereignty work here in the United States with the work that's happening on the African continent. Next slide. I'm wrapping it up. So there were many, many other meaningful connections there that were made. Some of the folks, Heather introduced me to a lot of people. She knew these folks because she's been several times. But it was just a wonderful experience. And so for those African Americans, if you define yourself in that way, who have bought into this idea that Africans don't like us, let me just dispel that, okay? I got so much love and there was so much unity that it was just incredible. So it was a wonderful experience. Next slide. So this is our sister Charity Hicks. Actually, the first slide I began with was our brother Kadiri Snefara, who is now an ancestor, who also came out. He didn't do a keynote for this, but Heather brought him out several years ago for some event. I don't even remember which event it was, but I started with him because he's an ancestor, and I'm ending with Sister Charity Hicks, who is one of the co-founders of our organization, who is also an ancestor, and she often used to remind us to wage love. Next slide. And so if you're interested in contacting us, this is how you do it. So I'm told I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to try to wrap this up in, I now have 3. So I'm breaking out of the European, the Eurocentric idea of time. Time is an illusion. No, I'll try to adhere to the 3 minutes. So, you know, we hear a lot about fighting what we're against, and I'm for that. I'm down for the fight. I'm with it. Also, in addition to fighting what we're against, we have to define clearly what we're for. And I would say even defining what we're for is more important than what we're against. We have to create a vision, because you can't really build a movement just on what you're against. You have to build a movement based on vision of what you're trying to create, of what the new world could be. And so, in many ways, our movement and the organizations within our movement become a microcosm of the society that we're trying to bring into being. And so we have the responsibility within our organizations and within ourselves of eliminating the vestiges of white supremacy, patriarchy, and the kind of classist notions that marginalize and denigrate people. And we have to nurture relationships that are rooted in love, caring, compassion, respect, equity, justice, collective decision-making, mutual benefit, and trust. And I want to end by just reading a short essay that I wrote last year. I'm still within the time frame. This is not, don't worry, this is not like the first one, okay? This is short. But it's important that you pay careful attention. I got you? Okay. This has all just become too complex. I long ago gave up eating meat and fish for health reasons. I later developed a sensitivity for the environmental impact of corporate meat production and overfishing. I gave up eating white bread and white rice after reading Elijah Muhammad's How to Eat to Live in 1975. I stopped eating mucus-producing dairy products and eggs a few years later. But now is the biggest step of all, to give up eating altogether. Here's why. Some of my younger friends have warned me that the continued consumption of tofu or other soy products will result in me growing breasts and being, let's say, less manly. Dr. Sebi warned against eating hybrid foods, so there goes broccoli, carrots, kale, cauliflower, collards, beets, chard, spinach, celery, and most onions, potatoes, and tomatoes. Almonds and products made from almonds, such as almond milk and almond butter, require tremendous amounts of water to be grown and are thus unsustainable. Same with avocados, which each require about 60 gallons of water to grow to maturity. So no more almonds or avocados. Oranges, bananas, and pineapples are out of the question because of the carbon released into the atmosphere by transporting these tropical fruits hundreds of miles. Besides, Dr. Sebi said pineapples aren't good for you. Rice is also out because most of it is imported from thousands of miles away and has a high glycemic count. Cocoa, Brazil nuts, and chestnuts are out because of unfair labor practices. Oils aren't good for you, and much of the virgin olive oil on American shelves is fake. Using palm oil contributes to deforestation. If I only want to eat foods that are hyper-local, sustainably grown, using fair labor practices, and are not hybrids, I'm left to foraging for wild edibles. But they are also impacted by the toxins in the water and the soil. This has all just become too complex. So, I made the difficult, but socially and environmentally responsible decision to resign from the eaters of the world. Henceforth, I will only extract energy from the sun and the air around us. I will be forced to distance myself from those of you who choose, despite the evidence of its harmful impact, to continue eating. Stay woke, vibrate higher, ban eating. Psych. Thank you.
So as we send you into dinner, we really want to show you one of the things I'm most proud of that we've accomplished, which is these films. So we're going to show you Agroecology in Action, which is the 5th film of our 5-part series. It features Malik and Black Star Farmers. It's actually a shorter clip. These films are about 8 to 10 minutes, but we made a 5-minute clip. So as you go into dinner, we're going to show that film. Just a reminder that the silent auction closes at 8. We'll give you another reminder before it closes. And also a reminder to send someone now to look at the desserts and decide what dessert you want and start filling up your envelopes with donations and filling up membership cards, which we'll explain more in a little bit.
Thank you to Malik. Thank you to all our volunteer servers who are going to be bringing out your food right now. And so we'll stop talking.
Industrial agriculture has destroyed natural ecosystems and exacerbated the climate crisis. While technological interventions like genetically modified seeds and digital agriculture have been pushed as solutions to global hunger, they don't address the root causes. Instead, they make farmers and consumers even more dependent on big multinational corporations. Around the world, people are already fighting climate change and feeding their communities with agroecology. Agroecology is a farming practice that restores ecosystems, builds resilience, and supports food sovereignty by ensuring that local farmers are in charge of their own food systems.
We go back to how our founding members were doing agriculture, that it was agroecology before the word or the term was being used. So we honor of that ancestral wisdom, ancestral practices, and we promote doing work with the land or farming work in small scale or medium scale farms, and that we use the inputs that are available in the farm. So we follow agroecology principles that have to do with the management of the soil, so to maintain it healthy. Basically, we're imitating nature. We are doing diversification. We don't have monocrops. We have diversification. We're trying to imitate the forest. We're using water adequately, sustainably.
The time was spent building the soil condition, improving the soil condition. So for the past 2 years, that's what we've done, building the soil. Now we feel like the soil is strong enough, ready for takeoff. And then as we go, we still want to be putting in practices that will not disturb what we have gained, the gains we have had.
So we understand that we're practicing sovereignty. We're practicing this liberation way of doing work that we call agroecology, right?
For people of African descent in the so-called Western Hemisphere, part of the project that we have to engage in to lead to our liberation is what some people call decolonization, or not only decolonization of practices and institutions within society, but decolonization of our minds. And so for us, that process of decolonization is not disconnected from our farming projects. And so we are, of course, trying to find ways of growing food that is productive, both for the human beings benefiting from the production of the food, but also the earth itself and the other animals, insects, and plants with which we co-inhabit on the earth.
People growing food for themselves and their communities takes back some power from corporations.
There's a tremendous amount of work to be done in liberating ourselves, and the first way to make that happen is by liberating the land. Love it, care for it, nourish it, and it will nourish you. Freeing the land frees the people.
We all have the ability to steward this land. We are taught to believe that we don't. We are taught to believe that we don't know how to grow food, that we don't know how to build our own homes, that we don't know how to raise our own children. We are taught to believe that we do not have the ability and thus we must rely on a system. But in order to have true food sovereignty, we must understand our own capabilities.
Bill Gates and other wealthy philanthropists claim to care about solving poverty and hunger, but they are refusing to fund solutions that work. They envision a future where farming is done by robots and drones on large plantations. These technologies will not deliver accessible food for all, and they do not help us meaningfully adapt to climate change. Instead, they feed the agribusiness industry's voracious appetite for more profits built on farmers' labor, land, and seeds. It's time to demand a change. From Kenya to Cuba to India to Iowa, farmers are growing healthy and nutritious food, rebuilding ecosystems, and developing innovative ways to cope with a hotter and transformed world. Turning away from industrial agriculture and investing in agroecology has never been more urgent.
If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, shake. Okay, hey everybody. My name is Estefania, and this is Sai. Both use they, them pronouns, just in case you need to know that. So we're here to make a little pitch for CAGJ around the fundraising effort, but we wanted to talk a little bit about the work that we do, which is connected to CAGJ and how they've been supporting our work. And so I'm gonna get started. We're just gonna pass the mic back and forth and fill in. Okay, so Sai and I have known each other for a really long time. We actually we know each other from organizing here in Seattle, specifically in the context of the UW. We met, Sai was a student, I was kind of like a mentor person for the group that they were organizing with, and we were trying to get the UW to commit at least 20% of their purchasing to purchasing food from small and medium producers and community-based businesses. They never signed the commitment, so boo, the UW. And prior to that, I had been organizing with fishermen and fisheries for years back before when I lived in Boston, and Sai had been doing their thing here, and we went from organizing at UW to organizing community meals in the community, bringing up folks together, get conversations started around food sovereignty and what we wanted to see here. And in 2019, after a local catch summit that happened in Portland, Oregon, there were a couple folks that were coming up north to have a meeting at the CAGJ office, and we were invited to that. So we go to this meeting, and in this meeting we learned what was going on with this company Bounty and the fight to stop genetically engineered salmon. And so in that meeting, and a couple weeks after that, we kind of got the sense that we could actually really help to fulfill a role that involved grassroots organizing and mobilizing young people of color for this cause. Up until then, a lot of this was led by Native folks, especially here in the Pacific Northwest, who had done a lot of advocacy strategies, litigated strategies. They sued the FDA. They had done a lot of efforts to try to stop this fish. And so what we wanted to do is add the grassroots organizing component.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, once we recognized this need to mobilize together, we worked together to build a community of folks that were ready to mobilize and organize around blocking genetically engineered salmon, which of course was challenging during that time as COVID-19 lockdowns were beginning to be implemented across the country, but also the virtual spaces that organizing efforts were moving towards really lended itself to us building relationships on a national scale. And so we focused our efforts around building support for independent farmers and fishers and for indigenous food sovereignty efforts. And our team brought together people from all over the United States, as well as internationally, including from Washington, Oregon, Boston, California, Florida, and in Canada as well. And so our work in block corporate salmon is centered around opposing genetically engineered salmon, which the company Bounty, as Stephanie mentioned, made to have a farmed salmon that grows twice as fast as wild salmon. And while Bounty considers their product as a solution to food scarcity, we know that the real solution to restoring our food systems lies primarily in supporting independent farmers and fishers, mutual aid, community-led projects, and indigenous sovereignty over our lands and waters. And as Noel said previously, Salmon is a cultural keystone species. Here in the Pacific Northwest, it is essential to our oceans, watersheds, and is central to ways of knowing and being for many coastal Native nations and indigenous peoples who consider themselves salmon people. Aqua Bounty's genetically engineered salmon is not only detached from all these efforts, but their genetically engineered product endangers the environment and wild salmon. Aqua Bounty doesn't respect its workers, is not transparent with consumers, and has remained inattentive to calls from communities and Native nations to stop what they're doing.
Okay, so what have we done since? So we followed a couple strategies, but one of them has been to get restaurants, for example, to make a commitment to boycott genetically engineered salmon. We know that restaurants are actually not required to tell people what they're serving, so they're not required to make the labels of the food available for people, right? And so that's why Aqua Bounty is targeting restaurants to sell there first, so that you're just eating the prepared salmon and you don't get to see where it came from or what the label was. And so we actually won a campaign that was pretty significant to get Aramark, a huge food service company, to make a commitment to boycotting genetically engineered salmon, but they were the first company ever to name the reason to be in solidarity with indigenous peoples. So that was a big, yeah. And so, okay, since then we've done so many things, including a lot of creative actions, especially around Indigenous Peoples Day. We have pushed back when necessary, when Aqua Bounty does some bullshit. We've done a lot of workshops, especially one of my favorite ones, which is a visionary fiction workshop, which is a workshop where we imagine a new world together. We actually hosted a big training here in Seattle with 80 people, only people of color. And that was extremely successful, and then the pandemic hit right after. And so after that, we proceeded in doing a lot of virtual organizing, like Sai said, and we were able to do a lot of things with that, including the Aramark campaign that I just mentioned, and gained a lot of support from different organizations, including some that Heather and Noel mentioned earlier, like the Local Catch Network, which is a network of small and community fishermen across the country, the North American Marine Alliance that actually supports that network, the Center for Food Safety that is an anchor around a lot of the litigative strategies around this issue, Salmon Defense, they're a Native organization based in Oregon. They do a lot of also working with politicians to change policies around this issue. They also follow a lot of litigative strategies to get where they need to get. We also have support from the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, which is an organization that brings together 4 tribes along the Columbia River. And, oh, my bad. Oh, thank you, yes. Okay, and then the slides are actually in this order, so if you could go to the next to last slide right now. Yes, thank you. Okay, so there over here, the person that you see with the mic, his name is Braden Humphrey, and he actually became a whistleblower to the campaign. He leaked 113 videos and photo evidence of what is happening inside the facility where they're growing these fish in Indiana. Yeah, and it was a big deal to get connected with him and really validate, what we thought was happening behind the scenes. We got connected to him via an organization that's called Williams County Alliance. They're a bunch of community organizers in Ohio that are resisting this issue because the company wants to build the largest facility yet in Ohio. And so we've actually presented we spent 3 months compiling all this evidence and making a big report that we call the Aqua Bounty Exposed Report, and we presented that to the FDA, and of course they didn't listen. And so we're still going at it, right? We've been able to travel within the states and nationally. We went to the first Native food fair ever to be held in DC, and that was really, really special to see the power that Native people are building through first foods in this country. Like Heather and Noel were talking about, we also went to Farm Aid, and that is the last slide, thank you. We went to Farm Aid and I wasn't there unfortunately, but people had a lot of fun, and it was really special because it was an event that brought together community fishermen who are the solution to this issue, right? Native fishermen, community fishermen, that's who we should be uplifting instead of genetically engineered salmon that grow in tanks. So this year, we're actually excited, now that we're we're not out of the pandemic, but people are starting to organize more in person and bring people together in person much more. We're excited to be doing that more locally. And if you can go back 2 slides now. We're excited to grow our team. And so, we have a table over there. Please sign up if you want to be involved. One of the actions that we were involved in recently was with Black Star Farmers and a bunch of our friends that are resisting APEC. And we made this beautiful mural in front of the Hilton where there was a press conference that all these APEC corporate people were meeting at. Okay, so what's success in this? We want to see this company die. That's what we want. We want it to stop existing. And we've been successful to some degree. We've been pushing enough. Of course the media is not going to pick up the story when it's not hot, right? But we've been pushing enough that finally now the media is covering our story in the way that we want them to cover it, in a way that the company is actually having to respond to what we're saying. And so that is, feels powerful, but it still doesn't mean that the company is gone. However, many investors, because of the negative news, many investors have pulled out. Their stock is under $1 right now, and they're being threatened to be delisted from NASDAQ. We know there's a lot of risks, We know that a bigger company can just buy them up. We know that there's other things, but what we do to make sure that our spirits are high is we have met for the last 4 years every single week for 2 hours with our comrades across the country to strategize and keep moving. We try not to stay stuck. We try to just keep moving with whatever is there, and to not get attached to anything and not feel sad when we lose. And so back to CAGJ, we have done all of this work all throughout these 4 years with the support of CAGJ, with resources, whether it be money or space provided to hold our workshops, whether it's virtual or in person. We've received a lot of advice and connections to this campaign because of that, because of CAGJ's work, and CAGJ's connection to the Makoshu tribe, which are some of the folks that have participated in the litigative strategies against genetically engineered salmon. Oh. Okay, so the ask. So if you look at the folder on your table, you'll find the CAGJ membership forms. And I believe today the goal is to raise $30,000. Can we give it up for $30,000? And to get there, we are expecting to get about 25 more sustainers, monthly sustainers. And so 25 new monthly sustainers would get the goal there. And any size make a difference. And whenever I fundraise, I really mean that. I think any donation really, really makes a difference because it even gets you participating, right, into supporting this work. And so please consider that.
Yeah, and to emphasize what Stephanie has said, please do consider becoming a monthly sustainer tonight, because that reliable income makes such a difference and allows us all at CAGJ and all of us who are reliant on CAGJ's networks and support. It makes such a huge difference for us to be able to continue organizing together. And so everybody who does sign up to become a sustainer tonight, and sustainers who also pledge to increase their gift will get CAGJ's most recent zine, which I have an example of here. And this zine features the art from Morgan Brown, who's a Simpson artist. And we have used Morgan Brown's art recently as well when we went to Farm Aid, and we printed maybe hundreds of Morgan Brown's art through screen printing on shirts and fabrics, and connected with a lot of people, independent farmers and fishers and food producers who showed up to Farm Aid over the course of the day. And that was really beautiful, and we really appreciate that connection. So if you do sign up to become a monthly sustainer, you will get that zine that features all of this beautiful art and all of this beautiful content. But for some clear instructions on how to donate, we ask that you please fill out a membership form, which you can also find in the envelopes on your table. And you can make a pledge by donating either with your debit card number. If you do so with your debit card, just please make sure to check out later tonight at the checkout table. Filling out the form is important though, regardless, even if you're donating cash. And people who do pledge to become sustainers don't necessarily have to go to checkout. Only the people who make a one-time donation tonight will need to go to the checkout table, or if you win something at the silent auction, which will have just closed recently. Also, very, very importantly, how we sweeten the deal for you all is that every dollar that you give or pledge tonight goes towards your table's dessert auction bid, which I don't know if y'all noticed when you came in, all the beautiful desserts on that table over there, but the table with the biggest total will get to pick their dessert first. So keep your eye on it, suss out what you want, you know. And if you become a $20 sustainer tonight, that means you'd have just added $240 to the pot of your table. So the amount that you would have paid for a full year. Lastly, we also just want to show our gratitude to you all. And to do that, we have gifts of appreciation. So for everybody who does sign up as a $20 a month sustaining donor, or donates a one-time donation tonight of $200 or above, we have this really, really gorgeous apron to gift to you all as a show of gratitude for all of your support in helping us continue this work that we do, which we couldn't make happen without all of the folks in the community who really help support us through monthly donations or through one-time donations as well. And so thank you all for being here and sharing this space with us and kind of getting to revel instead in these narratives of abundance rather than scarcity as corporations would have us believe and sit in. So again, thank you all. We're so grateful to be here with you all tonight. And yeah, please come to us if you have any questions. And yeah, grateful to be here with you all. Thanks.
So folks will be coming around to collect those envelopes in just a second. Are you guys ready with your envelopes? Ready to have them picked up? Filling out cards, maybe? Yeah, but if you're ready, can I get volunteers to start collecting the envelopes? Noelle, maybe you can help me find folks. So the last part of our program, other than our thank yous, is we always ask people to take action at this dinner. So we want to make it accessible to everyone, that you can do something tonight. So we've chosen for our action tonight to highlight the struggle of Black Star farmers right now to prevent Seattle Parks and Rec from destroying this garden that's at Cal Anderson Park. There's a petition going around that if you know how to use the QR code, even from over there, I guess far away, you can focus your phone on this and it'll bring you to the petition. But I want to introduce Marcus Henderson from Black Star Farmers, who is just going to give us a little bit of the background about what's going on right now and the pushback.
Thank you, Heather. So yeah, I'm just going to read a little bit from a press release that we shared. This was written collectively, so I think this speaks to all the members of Black Star Farmers and what we're advocating for in regard to the Black Lives Memorial Garden. So the Black Lives Memorial Garden is a dedicated memorial space to honor the countless Black and Indigenous lives murdered by law enforcement in Washington State and beyond. Born through protest, the garden has been a source of joy and healing for many members of the Capitol Hill community for the past 3.5 years. It symbolizes a deep connection to this city's legacy of occupation protests led by poor and working class, queer people of color. The garden grows an abundance of produce and herbal medicine that is harvested and distributed freely to the local community and is home to many native plants that are vital for the regeneration of the Capitol Hill urban ecosystem. The garden has expanded beyond its symbolic representation of resistance against violent state oppression to become an active community hub for mutual aid networks, food distribution, and political education for serving the needs of the most marginalized in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. On October 4th, Black Star Farmers was notified by Seattle Parks and Recreation about their pending turf renovation. The Seattle Parks and Recreation Department plans to remove the BLMG and recolonize the garden's thriving biodiverse ecosystem with invasive European grass. Even though we know that lawns have long been a blatant tool of colonialization, gentrification, and classism, SBR's actions involving the BLMG are aligned with the shameful history of worker exploitation, violent displacement of houseless neighbors, and activist movements for the last 25 years. Seattle Parks has reached out many times over the last 3 years to attempt garden relocation. These conversations have felt one-sided and pushing towards their preconceived outcome of moving the garden. Despite their claims of seeking partnership, SBR has not sought to come to a deeper understanding of our work, nor have they recognized the importance and wide community support of the garden. Due to a fundamental misalignment in values, we chose not to enter into any contracts with Parks Department and accepted the constant risk of removal. This is what it means to be an occupation protest. The Black Lives Memorial Garden shares a legacy with the Black and Indigenous-led occupation movements working to resist state violence. We recognize that we are on the unceded ancestral lands of the Duwamish and Coast Salish peoples, and that land was stolen through a variety of violent and coercive strategies that include treaties, assimilation tactics, and veiled threats. It's important for the settler colonial organizations like Seattle Parks and Recreations to understand that the dominion that they have was created through the same violence used to separate Black and Indigenous communities from their land for profit. Organizations like SBR must recognize this historical context and should thus support opportunities for marginalized peoples to reconnect with the land, even if it does not fit within their current paradigm. SBR has not made any effort to acknowledge their role in perpetuating systemic harms. Thus, we do not recognize the authority of Seattle Parks and Recreation. For this, we are being swept. This is the reality of living in a capitalist and imperialist state. The Black Lives Memorial Garden stands tall as a symbolic representation of resistance, grief, and healing. Regardless of what happens, the fight will always live on with us, and hopefully all of you. The occupation that is the garden is not the movement. The people are. We are. And though we may bend, we will not break. Yeah, we'll leave it there. So all of you know, yesterday was the day that SBR said we had to remove everything from the garden. So we occupied the space as we always do, with activities to bring community together, to do mutual aid with joy, with healing. Our brother Malik joined us and offered some amazing words of wisdom that was just divine. So thank you, brother. We are going to continue occupying the space through activities, so please look for messages from Black Star Farmers. There are also opportunities for some of you to come and organize with us, alongside us. This garden does not remain, will not remain simply because of the efforts of one person, right? This is a mass effort. We must all come together and use our own skills or grow our skills as organizers in order to resist state oppression. So please join us. Please exercise your own self-determination and let SBR know that you would like the garden to stay. Lastly, I would say that it is not unrelated what is happening in Palestine right now. I'm not going to compare what's happening to us to what's happening to Palestinians, but this is systemic. So all of you, please sign this, but also resist the oppression that is going on in Palestine right now. Let's all work to stop the U.S. from sending $4 billion to Israel for their military occupation of Palestine, okay? We must demilitarize, and then that means all of us need to call our local officials and do something about it, okay? Folks are being displaced right now from their homes. I think they were given 24 hours to leave. Imagine if you were given 24 hours to leave your home right now. Okay, so let's do something about it, y'all, all right?
So we want to appreciate Malik and Black Star Farmers Table by announcing that you're the first ones to get to go get your dessert. Number 2. Are you going to do it? This is going to be quick. All right, table. Okay, so the other thing is, psych, we're actually an anti-capitalist organization, so we don't reward the richest table. So this is actually going to be random. I'm going to go slowly and call out the tables one by one. Table 23. Okay, I just benefited my 10-year-olds. That was a little love note. I love you, Henry. Table 22 goes next. Maybe there's nobody at that table. I hear it, so you go. Table 18. I'm not hearing cheers. Table 7. Okay, thank you. That's what I like to hear. Yeah. Table 13. Guess what? You can also share the desserts. They're really big, so everybody can have everything. Table 10. Table 5. Table 15. Table 6. Table 19. Table 12. Table 16. Table 21. 24. And everybody else. A reminder, if you made a one-time donation tonight, we need you to check out before leaving.